Alrighty, so it looks like the Pentagon is gearing up to take on the Houthis in a little something they're going to call Operation Prosperity Guardian. Not to be confused with Operation Desert Storm or Operation Enduring Freedom or any of the other Middle East wars. It's not clear yet because they haven't officially announced this yet. They've just so-called leaked it, by which in this they're not even really faking it to be a leak. They directly gave the information to someone at Politico and said, "Oh, they're going to hold a press conference tomorrow." And so this is going to be a coalition of the willing coming together to protect international trade in the Red Sea. However, what it really is a coalition to protect Israel, because all of these ships are being blockaded, and if they try and run the blockade, attacked by Yemen, by the Yemeni government, because Yemen has put sanctions on Israel, just as the United States puts sanctions on various countries like North Korea or Iran. And, if you have a cargo ship that is violating those sanctions with Iran, the United States is not going to let that pass. And so likewise, with all of these ships who are doing business with Israel, the Yemenis are not letting them pass. They're violating their sanctions. And so there is nothing about the sanctions placed on Israel by Yemen that make them any less legitimate than the sanctions placed on a country like Iran or North Korea by the United States. But as we all learned a very long time ago, the rules-based international order is for thee, not for me. The rules-based international order means that what the U.S. State Department says goes. Or in this case, what the U.S. Pentagon says goes. The people of Yemen were considered an enemy race, and they were hunted down, they were exterminated, and they had their food supply cut off. But the people of Israel, because they are on the right side, because they have the right friends, they can get away with whatever they want. And they will never risk having the U.S. put sanctions against them. They'll never risk the U.S. blockading their ports. They'll never risk the U.S. restricting international trade with Israel. Instead, we get quite the opposite. The U.S. and we're told, and apparently 39 other nations are going to stick up for Israel's right to conduct international trade during this time of war. And they very well may just restart the war with Yemen, because frankly, for almost 10 years the U.S. was at war with Yemen for no reason. Now at least the U.S. has somewhat of a reason in their eyes to go to war with Yemen. If they were willing to go to war with Yemen for no reason, going to war with Yemen over Israel seems like a really safe bet. Go to war with Iraq for Israel, go to war with Yemen for first Saudi Arabia, and now going to war with Yemen for Israel. I'm detecting a pattern here. And I guess you could say that the U.S. went to war with Afghanistan for Saudi Arabia's sake as well, because if they didn't invade Afghanistan, where were they going to invade? I mean, the most logical place would be Saudi Arabia, since that was really the origin, that was really the locus of the very idea of Al-Qaeda and the 9/11 attacks. As we know now, the Saudis had a lot of responsibility for 9/11. But in order to deflect from that, they blamed it on the Taliban. And that's what the United States did, to protect their friends in Saudi Arabia. And the worst part of all this is that just nobody cares. I mean, we could have ground troops parachuting into Sana'a tomorrow. I don't think the average American would notice. And so the war machine grinds on. But there's not a lot of grinding because really it's still a well-oiled machine at this point. There is no inhibition. You know, there are more good people in the world making noise these days than there ever have been, but at the end of the day, it hasn't made a difference. The regime is as the regime does. The bureaucracy, in both the military and the rest of the federal government, still controlled by the worst people among us. They have nothing but contempt for the ordinary American, and yet they still demand respect. Not only should our leaders not be leading, every single one of them should be put on trial. If we were a serious nation, we would be demanding that of these people. Lloyd Austin is an arms industry lobbyist, and he's running the Pentagon. No one finds that strange. But hell, I guess that's because Trump appointed, I think he was an actual Boeing CEO. The people who have everything to gain from this country being embroiled in a ceaseless quagmire, or hell, ceaseless quagmires on every corner of the globe. Those are the people who are running our military and have been for decades and decades. As far as Lloyd Austin is concerned, the best thing that could happen would be for the U.S. to be embroiled in so many wars overseas that it completely bleeds us dry. He would like to extract as many dollars from the American system as possible to enrich his company, Raytheon, which he sat on the board of. Now, he resigned his seat on the board, I believe, in order to do this, but I'm sure they would be more than happy to take him back as soon as his tenure as defense secretary comes to an end. Just like arms industry lobbyist Nikki Haley, who resigned her seat on the board of Boeing in order to run for president. You know, people have said a lot of negative things about little Ron DeSantis. But to my knowledge, he at the very least is not an arms industry lobbyist, and I don't think he ever has been. Now, I'm sure he got kickbacks from them in some form, because when he was in Congress, I believe he was all in on the, on the Warhawk stuff. Oh wait, but wasn't he a JAG officer at Gitmo? Okay, so he's probably got some dirty hands. So it's probably questionable, because he was, he kept his mouth shut on a lot of this stuff until he started running for president, and he's been squirrely on it. He hasn't been great. But I was trying to give him some credit and say, well, at least he's not Nikki Haley. And it's like, I think back, he might be Nikki Haley when he gets into office, if he ever did. Not that he ever would get into office. But hey, you know what? Maybe the dream of Vice President Carlson, maybe that would come true one day. Who knows? If that did happen, that might be one of the few things that could reignite my optimism. Because as of right now, I'm still more optimistic for Argentina than I am for the United States. And yes, I get it. Oh, Milei's not done it. He's in his first 2 weeks, he hasn't been as aggressive as some people would have hoped. You know what? I'm going to give the guy a year, see what he does. If he just lays an egg, I'm not going to be praising him anymore. But for now, I'm in wait-and-see mode on Milei. Because there is no one in world history I can think of who came to power with a message like his that resonated and that was as close to what I believe, down to citing like the exact same books that influenced all of his political thoughts. Anyway, getting back to the United States, with all of the rot in our system, if we could get someone in Washington who at the very least understood how bad the situation really is. Trump doesn't understand how bad things are, and neither does DeSantis. I don't think DeSantis thinks that things are as bad as they are. He might, He's by far not the worst person in the world. I think he was much better as governor of Florida than I expected him to be. I expected nothing much out of him. Trump is still a bit naive, but Tucker, his eyes are wide open. And so if I saw Tucker's name on a presidential ticket, I would at least have some hope. Not hope that we would win in the long run, but hope that the system would continue to unravel, and that the system would unravel more quickly. Because ultimately things will have to get worse before they get better. But I just want to see things get worse for their side, not for ours. Things will get worse in aggregate because it will be a time of uncertainty, like the period of the collapse of East Germany. That's kind of what I have in mind. I don't think that we're going to have it's not going to be like the 1860s. I don't think there's going to be a civil war a la A24's upcoming film starring Nick Offerman. I don't see that happening, a military conflict, but something like East Germany, or more specifically the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was a federation that crumbled. East Germany crumbled and then was subsequently absorbed, devoured by its neighbor, which, in my opinion, was a bad move for all involved. So anyway, with that said, I will see you folks hopefully back here tomorrow. I'll try.